วัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ
It is the 25th of July 2553 BE or 2010. Good morning everyone and welcome to Meditation for Peace program. I am Sanan Pandrotzan and sitting next to me is Mr. Naripon Jantragunsiri or Pina. Both of us will be your hosts for today. This week is made significant by a major Buddhist holiday known as Asanhat Busha Day. We are obliged to discuss this topic for the understanding of our Buddhist and non-Buddhist viewers. So what is on your mind when we talk about this special day, Pina?
I'll start by saying that we go to the Buddha as our teacher and refuge. We respect the doctrine of the Buddha, who is far from defilements, perfectly self-enlightened, out of compassion and sympathetic joy for the many. He set in motion the view of the Dhamma and declares for the first time the Four Noble Truths to the five ascetics at Isipatana in the deer park near Benares.
At that time, Venerable Anya Gontanya, the leader of the five ascetics, listened to the doctrine of the Buddha and attained the dustless, stainless eye of the truth and realized that whatever is of nature of arising also is of the nature of cessation.
After that, the Venerable Gontanya asked for ordination, and it was he who was the first in the world to be given ordination by the Lord Buddha.
The gem of the Sangha thus was first born in the world. The triple gem, that is to say, the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, was thenceforward complete.
Before we delve into the historical story of Asanhat Busha Day, we will take a 10 minutes break for our meditation practice with the most venerable Parajapavana Visuddha Lwangpo Thamma Chayo.
With his genuine instruction in Dhammakaya meditation method, you will be guided to the triple gem inside, provided that your practice is done in earnest and also at ease. See you in a little while.
ต่อจากนี้ไปให้ตั้งใจให้แน่แน่วมุ่งตรงต่อหนทางพระนิพพานกันทุกๆคนนะลูกนะให้นั่งขัดสมาธิโดยขาขวาทับขาซ้ายมือขวาทับมือซ้ายให้นิ้วชี้ของมือข้างขวาจรดนิ้วหัวแม่มือข้างซ้ายวางไว้บนหน้าตักพอสบายๆหลับตาของเราเบาๆพอสบายๆคล้ายกับตอนที่เราใกล้จะหลับอย่าไปบีบเปลือกตาอย่ากดลูกในตานะจ๊ะหลับตาสักข้อลูกไม่ถึงกับปิดสนิทนะจ๊ะพอสบายแล้วก็ทำใจของเรานะให้เบิกบานให้แจ่มชื่นให้สะอาดบริสุทธิ์ผ่องใสไร้กังวลในทุกสิ่งไม่ว่าจะเป็นเรื่องอะไรก็ตามให้ปลดให้ปล่อยให้วางให้ปลดให้ปล่อยให้วางให้คลายความผูกพันจากทุกสิ่งทำใจของเรานะให้ว่างว่างเปล่าจากความคิดทั้งหลายทั้งหมดนะจ๊ะปล่อยวางหมดทิ้งทุกอย่างวางทุกสิ่งเพราะว่าสรรพสัตว์และสรรพสิ่งทั้งหลายเมื่อเกิดขึ้นตั้งอยู่แล้วก็ไปสู่จุดสลายเสื่อมไปด้วยกันหมดทั้งสิ้นจะเป็นคนเป็นสัตว์เป็นสิ่งของตึกรามบ้านช่องแม้แต่โลกใบนี้ ก็ต้องเสื่อมสลายไปเพราะฉะนั้นสังขารร่างกายของเราก็จะเป็นเช่นนั้นแหละให้นึกถึงความเป็นจริงของสรรพสัตว์และสรรพสิ่งอย่างนี้ใจจะได้ปล่อยวางได้แล้วก็มาระลึกนึกถึงว่าเป้าหมายของการมาเกิดเป็นมนุษย์นั้นนะวัตถุประสงค์หลักก็คือจะมาทำพระนิพพานให้แจ้งสลัดตนให้พ้นจากกองทุกข์อย่างน้อยก็มาแสวงบุญ มาสร้างบารมี เพื่อจะเอาบุญต่อบุญเอาบารมีต่อบารมีเนี่ยให้กลั่นกายวาจาใจเราให้สะอาดบริสุทธิ์จนกระทั่งหลุดพ้นจากกิเลสอาสวะทั้งหลายพ้นจากการเวียนว่ายแต่เกิดโดยเฉพาะหมู่คณะของเรามุ่งไปสู่ที่สุดแห่งธรรมนี่คือวัตถุประสงค์หลักของชีวิตนอกนั้นก็เป็นเรื่องรองลงมาต้องจับหลักของชีวิตให้ได้เมื่อเรามีบุญวาสนาได้เกิดอยู่ในร่มเงาของพระพุทธศาสนาอย่างนี้เนี่ยเราก็จะต้องศึกษาคำสอนพระสัมมาสัมพุทธเจ้าแล้วก็ปฏิบัติตามคำสอนนั้นเพื่อจะได้เดินตามรอยของพระสัมมาสัมพุทธเจ้าในที่สุดก็จะหลุดพ้นจากความทุกข์ทรมานของชีวิตเข้าถึงความสุขอันเป็นอมตะได้เช่นเดียวกับพระสัมมาสัมพุทธเจ้าและพระอรหันต์ทั้งหลายนะจ๊ะเพราะวัตถุประสงค์ต้องการให้ใจมาหยุดมานิ่งอยู่ที่ศูนย์กลางกายฐานที่7เพราะหยุดเป็นตัวสำเร็จที่จะทำให้เราได้พบต้นทางสายกลางภายในซึ่งจะนำเราไปสู่พระรัตนตรัยได้เข้าถึงพระรัตนตรัยได้เข้าถึงพุทธรัตนะธรรมรัตนะสังฆรัตนะหรือก็ถึงพระธรรมกายในตัวซึ่งเป็นกายตรัสรู้ธรรมเป็นผู้รู้ผู้ตื่นผู้เบิกบานแล้วสมบูรณ์ไปด้วยจักขุญาณปัญญาวิชาและก็แสงสว่างเป็นอุปกรณ์ในการศึกษาเรื่องราวความเป็นจริงของชีวิตและก็เป็นทั้งสรณะที่พึ่งที่ระลึกที่แท้จริงของตัวเราและก็จะได้อาศัยพระธรรมกายนี่แหละนำไปสู่อายตนะนิพพานหลุดพ้นจากกิเลสอาสวะไปสู่อายตนะนิพพานเพราะนั้นต้นทางที่จะเข้าถึงพระรัตนตรัยเมื่อใจหยุดนิ่งนั้นมันจะเป็นดวงใสๆคล้ายกับดวงแก้วที่เราสมมุติต่างแต่ว่ามันจะเป็นดวงที่สุขใสกว่าและนำมาถึงความสุขอย่างที่ไม่มีประมาณเป็นความสุขที่เราหาไม่ได้จากที่อื่นเหมือนได้รับการยืนยันจากผู้ที่ได้เข้าถึงนั่นแหละไม่ว่าจะเป็นชาติไหนศาสนาไหนภาษาใดเผ่าพันธุ์ใดเมื่อฝึกใจหยุดนิ่งซึ่งเป็นของสากลที่ทุกคนทำได้พอหยุดนิ่งเข้าถึงดวงใสแล้วเนี่ยก็มักจะพูดเหมือนกันอย่างกับถอดเทปกันมาหรือไปนัดแนะกันมาพูด ทั้งที่อยู่กันคนละทวีปคนละประเทศแล้วก็ต่างความเชื่อด้วยว่าเป็นความสุขที่ยิ่งใหญ่ไม่มีประมาณไม่อาจจะหาจากที่ไหนได้ไม่เคยเจอพูดไม่ออกบอกไม่ถูกทีเดียวดวงธรรมดวงนี้จะมาพร้อมกับความสุขอย่างนี้จะเป็นพระเป็นเณรเป็นญาติโยมสาธุชนหรือทุกคนในโลกถ้าได้ตรงนี้แล้วก็มั่นใจได้เลยว่าจะเข้าถึงพระรัตนตรัยในตัวถ้ารักษาดวงธรรมดวงนี้ไว้ก็ปิดอบายไปสวรรค์เพราะว่าใจผ่องใสไม่เศร้าหมองเป็นดวงใสใจจะหยุดนิ่งต่อไปเองถึงตรงนั้นเราก็มีหน้าที่ดูไปเฉยๆดูปรากฏการณ์ที่เกิดขึ้นมาด้วยใจที่เป็นปกติเหมือนเราไปดูภาพยนตร์ที่เราไม่รู้ว่าตอนต่อไปจะเป็นอย่างไรหรือเรื่องราวต่อไปจะเป็นอย่างไรเราก็ดูอย่างเดียวแต่นี่เป็นโรงมหรสพภายในเป็นมหรสพสีขาวสีใสที่สูงส่งเรามองไปเดี๋ยวเราก็จะเห็นดวงนั้นขยายแล้วก็เดี๋ยวจะเข้าถึงดวงศีลดวงสมาธิดวงปัญญาดวงวิมุตติแล้วก็ดวงวิมุตติญาณทัศนะดวงธรรมต่างๆก็จะพุทธผ่านมาทำให้เราเข้าถึงกายในกายที่มีอยู่ดั้งเดิมไม่มีใครไปทำให้มาเราไม่ได้ทำให้เกิดขึ้นมาเป็นกายอยู่ดั้งเดิมใจมันก็จะใสบริสุทธิ์เพิ่มขึ้นยิ่งใสยิ่งบริสุทธิ์ยิ่งสะอาดก็ยิ่งมีความสุขที่กว้างขวางขึ้นไปเรื่อยๆเพราะฉะนั้นเราก็จะเป็นมนุษย์มหัศจรรย์เมื่อใจเราหยุดนิ่งสนิทติดตรงกลางกายเห็นดวงใสๆเห็นพระใสๆเห็นแสงสว่างภายในนะจ๊ะเวลาที่เหลือต่อจากนี้ไปอากาศกำลังเป็นใจกำลังสดชื่นเบิกบานให้ลูกทุกคนหยุดใจนิ่งนุ่มละมุนละไมกันต่อไปให้ลูกทุกคนสมหวังดังใจในการเข้าถึงพระรัตนตรัยในตัวทุกคนนะจ๊ะต่างคนต่างทำกันไปเงียบๆ
At the first part of meditation for peace, we left you with the completion of Triple Gem on the day of Asanha Punami, the full moon of the Asanha month in ancient Indian calendar.
Since the Buddha time, Buddhists came together on the Asanhapusha day, which is considered the day on which the first discourse was delivered by the Enlightened One. The first monk was ordained. The proclamation of the doctrine to the world was made by the Lord Buddha. The Triple Gem was completed, and the first disciple attained the dustless, stainless eye of the truth.
They come to recollect all the virtues of the Buddha and circumambulate the pagoda 3 times clockwise and make reverence with the offering.
With the offering, they resolve, "May the Exalted One, even though long attain parinibbana, but of perfect compassion, wisdom, and purity, accept these offerings we have in our hands for our lasting benefits and happiness."
I will conclude by saying that this is a Buddhist culture that should be done by one skilled in good who would attain that state of peace and wisdom on the Athana Puja Day.
Let us now move on to the interview episode. In our studio today, we have Mr. Robert Mawson again, talking about the power of the mind after his attaining Tama insight. Jenny Dana Rewong will be your host for the interview.
Wow, and I'll bet he still, meditates to this day.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Many of my students who learned years and years and years ago are still meditating. One of them in the United States is a dear friend. She's an Italian-American,
Yes.
and she's been my student for about 4 years. 2 years ago, she actually had me go to Italy to her
Oh.
friend's spa
Okay.
and teach for a week. And then her friend, and her name is Marina,
Yes.
so Daniela, her friend, and
Yes,
Marina
Marina.
came
Your
to
friend.
Wat Pat Tamagai and
did they?
meditated. They went to Panawat and meditated there.
Wow.
And then they came back, and I went back to Italy with them. I taught another week in the spa. And I believe that next year they're going to come again. I go to Panawat again.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very wonderful.
And they just love, both of them just love to meditate.
You have so many students, and you've seen so much around the world. Maybe you can tell us actually about a recent trip that you took. I think you just got back from Singapore.
That's true. And both my wife, Marcia, and myself were invited to Singapore by our group there, the Dhammakaya group there.
Right.
And Lumpy Somkia. And I must say that we were treated like royalty, like king and queen by our friends in Singapore. It was perhaps for my wife and I the most memorable occasion of our lives. And
Wow.
we've had many memorable occasions,
Yes.
and we have traveled all over the world. But I don't think we have been treated so royally in our lives. The people were just wonderful. And they had done a lot of preparation for about 12 months, in fact, for the celebrations of Visakha Puja.
Visakha.
And the celebrations went on over several days. And there were monks here from Wat Pat Tamagai who were also chanting about 6 times a day, every day.
Oh, wow.
And there were lots of activities in this very large convention center.
Right.
Thousands of people came to meditate also. And what was interesting is that many of those people meditating were actually crying. And even some of the people who, from our center there, our meditation center there, who were practiced meditators,
Right.
were also crying. They were moved by what was being said, what I was saying, but they were also moved by that inner peace they were feeling and the freedom that inner peace brought to them.
And they never felt that before.
And they never felt that
Right.
way before. And what was amazing to me was that there were many people there who had never meditated in their lives, had nothing to do with our center there. There were people who just walked in off the street.
Right into the convention
But
center.
they were moved by the meditation, and they all wanted their picture taken with me. They asked very, very good questions,
Yes.
and it was a memorable experience. And I'm going back to Singapore on the 27th for 2 days, and I'm really looking forward to meeting our
Oh, you
friends
are?
there before I fly back to the United States.
Wonderful. Now, you've brought this up a few times already about, how you've pretty much had a great impact on so many of the lives of your students. I'm curious to know about what technique you personally use in teaching meditation to them. So you did mention an example about how you were able to inspire them and motivate them through visualization or imagination. And how else do you do it in in teaching meditation? Are there other techniques that you use?
Yeah, other techniques. Are you talking about other techniques that I use in this form when I'm teaching this form of meditation?
Yes.
I try to keep the meditation interesting,
Right.
but the core of my teaching is the core,
Yes.
the same path that Luang Por is teaching. I don't deviate from that.
Right.
But I try to make the classes interesting so that the students will keep coming back.
Do you tailor it? You tailor it to your audience.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
And I've been teaching at the UN for many years. International civil servants, there are people from all over the world. And I remember teaching one class, and my wife wasn't there on this particular day, although my wife was one of my students at the UN, and she was working at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. But I asked my students when was the last time they called home and said to their mother that, "I love you, Mom." And this was in the day before cell phones. And they're not allowed to use the UN phones to call to their own parents. And otherwise, they would be having private conversations all over the world. It would cost a lot of money for the UN. And normally when I left that meditation class, I would take the train home and have my lunch at home. However, that day, I decided to go to the UN cafeteria opposite the building where I was teaching the meditation. And I was the first person in there. There was no one else in there at that time. And when I sat down with my food, all of a sudden, all of my students came there to eat. But they had no idea that I was there. And normally, because there are lots of restaurants around the UN,
Right.
and coffee shops, they would have gone somewhere else to eat, many different places.
Right.
But on that day, they all came into the cafeteria, and they put some tables together, and they were all smiling, and they all told me that they had called to their countries to tell their mothers that they loved them.
Oh, how exciting.
And I think that's very beautiful. So I bring these things into my meditation. Love is a very powerful word, and I know that Luang Por talks about love too. And when we are confident and we love ourselves, then we can give that love away. And at the end of every meditation that I do a loving kindness meditation. And it is not just a silent loving kindness meditation. I actually talk.
Right.
And I tell my students that inside of every human being, there are two rivers, if you like. And one is the river of love, and the other one is the river of kindness. And these two rivers can pour out of you. And when they meet, that love and that kindness becomes loving kindness. And those rivers can pour out and touch other people, other people's lives, so that they feel that loving kindness. And I get them to imagine that there's someone in the room who might be suffering. So allow your loving kindness to flow out and touch that person, whether they're suffering mentally or physically. I get them to imagine that their loving kindness can travel faster than the speed of light and can touch everyone in the street, and everyone in the town, and in the next town, and the country, and around the world. And they have wonderful, great power inside of them to touch other people's lives, to make a difference in other people's lives through loving kindness. And that's one way. And my students tell me, when I get feedback from them, that they love the loving kindness meditation. And many of them, if it's the first night we do meditation, and they've never meditated before, afterwards they say, "That was so beautiful. I never thought of reaching out in this way to touch other people's lives, to make a difference in other people's lives."
Right, right. Wow, that's so touching.
So I would never have had these thoughts myself, or this insight, this wisdom, if you like,
Right.
had I not learnt this technique of
Right.
meditation.
So it just comes naturally out of you, you know, all these wonderful techniques, you know, using the middle way meditation, so that people can make an impact on their own lives and bring more happiness to themselves
Yes,
and to other people.
correct.
So can you actually tell us more about what you might be doing in the near future? I hear you'll be going back to the United States soon.
I'm going back to the United States, and I've been asked by someone in Mobile, Alabama, one of our Thai people there, who they have a small center there,
Right.
and they've invited me to go there on the 3rd of August, and to stay for about 5 or 6 days, and they would like me to teach some meditation there and do a one-day retreat for them, and also to go to the University of Alabama and teach some meditation there. And I think that that's a great opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. I've never been to Alabama before, and I look forward a great deal to going and teaching meditation to the Thais and to the
Right.
people at the
The
university
local
there.
people.
Yeah.
Yes. And is there actually anything that you would want to maybe share with people who are watching this program? Anything that you want them to learn about, or something that you want to share with them from your own experience or through meditation?
Yeah, you know, people often wonder how long they should meditate.
Oh, yes.
It's one of the things, should we meditate? When should we meditate? And often people say, well, I just don't have the time. I'm so busy, I'm doing so many things. And I tell a story sometimes to my students. If it's a new class, I tell a story about, I say, I want you to imagine that my grandmother came back to life, and she came back to my house. And when she came back to my house, she found in the kitchen that we had a washing machine that washes the dishes, and that we had a microwave oven. And we had a toaster where you put the bread in and the toast pops out. And then when she went around the house, she found we had a vacuum cleaner for vacuuming the carpets. And we had a television, and we had radio, and we had CDs, and we had all these things. And we had all these time-saving devices. We even have an electric oven, and you press a button, and it cleans itself.
Right.
So my grandmother said, you have all these time-saving devices. What do you do with all the time that you now have in a day? Because you hardly have to do any work. You've got a washing machine. An electric washing machine washes all the clothes for you. You take them out, you put them into another machine, and it dries them.
everything for you.
This is just amazing.
There's a wrinkle
You have
free.
all of this time.
Right.
And yet, we tend to think we don't have any time. The problem is, we have to prioritize our time. And we have to ask ourselves, what is important? Because every single human being has the same amount of time every day. And if we don't use that time, eventually the clock, which is life, will stop ticking.
Right.
And when that clock stops, what do you want people to say about you when you die? And one should hope that when we die, that people will say, well, he or she made a difference. If someone can say that about a person who just died, this man or this woman made a difference,
Right.
then you have really lived your life.
Yes. They made it worth it.
If they can't say that about you, then perhaps you really haven't lived your life. So we have to prioritize. We have to look at what is important. And often in life, we are giving to others. And that's very noble, and that's very nice. But we have to also give to ourselves. And if we give ourselves the gift of meditation,
Right.
it is amazing how when we have a calm, peaceful mind, how much we can give to other people. And because we find solutions to problems quite quickly when we meditate,
Yes.
we tend to get more out of our day than we did before, and more time then to give to others,
Right.
and to share that loving kindness that comes through meditation.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed the interview and found something beneficial for your transformation. Next in line is the Dhamma lecture from Venerable Sander Kemat Thammo, the discourse on the right view from Sammatiti Sutta. Please stay tuned.
Apart from this world exists, the Buddha immediately said the next world exists. Because if our own lives at the very moment, this very moment, determined by our previous lives, then it must also be possible that our current lives are also determining our next life. On this is of course a topic that is difficult for people to understand. When we die from this world in the last moments of our life, all people in this world that have gone through such an experience have similar experiences. Why do we know that? Did you ask them when they were dying? No, we didn't. But some people came back. And that is what we call near-death experiences. And many retreats that I've went on, I've asked people, has anyone in this room experienced a near-death experience or an outer body experience? Well, just near-death experience. Or did any of your relatives experience one? Your friends? Almost always, every time, there is one person or two persons that have experienced a near-death experience. But it's something that is not often talked about. Because we like to talk about chit-chat, about peanut butter, about what program you've watched last night. We often do not tend to talk about death all day long. Anyone who does talk about death all day long usually doesn't have much friends. Unless you're a monk. So it's important for us to take a look at this. Near-death experience is actually very similar to many people all over the world. The first thing that people experience is what is called, as well, people who do research in this area, they call generally they call it your life flashing by. Right? People do research in this area, they call it the life review. So just before you pass away, you see your life, all the things that you've done, passing by. And many people experience also a feeling of a sort of universal causality, cause and effect operating. This is not Buddhist. These researches have been done mostly on people that are not Buddhist. They say this is something they see, that there is this causality going on, that we experience suffering because of the deeds that we have done with a clouded mind, and we experience happiness because of the things that we have done with a pure mind. So they see these things happening. In the ancient text of Buddhism, in what is called the Abhidhamma, or the parts of Buddhism, what is you might call Buddhist science or something like that, the ancient text on this, they say that before we pass away, we experience three things. Mostly three things. First of all, we experience what is called, these three things are called aramana, or means objects of the mind. The first thing we see is kamma aramana, which means we see our own actions flashing by. As a result, we might feel happy, we might feel disappointed. Depends on your actions. Depends on your own actions, not someone else. And then some people might see what is called kamma nimitta aramana, which means an images of the objects that you use in those actions. For example, you're someone who likes to give flowers to others, then you will see flowers. Or you like to give food to the monks, you see food, the food that you offered, or the utensils that you used. Or if you are a butcher and you've slaughtered animals, then you might see a knife or something like that. That is called kamma nimitta aramana. Then there is the final image that occurs at that moment and is a result of the quality of our mind, the state of mind that we are at that moment. And that is the most important one for our future destiny, future destination. That is kati nimitta aramana. Kati means destination. Nimitta means the sign. Aramana means object, as I mentioned. The object of mind that is the sign of destiny, of your destination. In other words, at this moment, and this has been reported in many near-death experiences, people will either see an image that is an image black, dark, and confining, or they will see brightness, sometimes a gate of light. They might see beings in other planes, but we'll come back to that later. And at this moment, people then, at a certain moment, the human body is discarded completely. There is no connection anymore with the body. And then then there is a rebirth taking place. And the rebirth takes place exactly according to the state of mind and according to the image that occurred at that time. If the image that occurred, or the sign of destiny at destination at the time, was a positive sign of destination, then the person will go to a place of happiness, which we call a happy destination. The Buddha used very simple words. Sukati, or happy destination. Very simple. If the mind is dark, clouded, it will go to an unhappy destination. So you can imagine that suppose you see all your actions flashing by and most of them are not that good. It's very hard at that moment to freshen up your mind and say, oh, I'm okay with that, or something like that. This is not the sort of moment that you start to think like that. Your mind is very objectively seeing what you have done in that life. So your actions are very much your tools at that moment and determine your future. So these things have been proven, people have found evidence for this in many near-death experience cases. Because near-death experience cases have been researched, thousands of them have been researched and done. And many of them have clear evidence that there is a mind going outside the body, and there is a mind that sees things going, appearing to that person. And the person will never act the same. Person who has experienced a near-death experience will never be the same. This is evidence from all the studies we've done, which shows that if we have knowledge about the afterlife, then that has a great impact on our lives. So the main point in talking about these three objects of mind that occur before before rebirth takes place is that our actions are the main cause. So if our actions have been positive, our mind is likely to be pure, and we are likely to be reborn in a positive place, in a place of happiness and a happy destination. But if our mind is impure because of the negative, destructive actions that we have done through our actions, physical actions, through our words, through our thoughts, then once we come to that final moment of life, our mind is very likely to be impure, and we are going to a place that is a place of suffering, a destination that is unhappy, or what people might call a netherworld or a hell. So this is some important thing. It's the quality of the mind that is important. We often study about the quality of many things around us, the quality of the things we buy, the quality of the things we eat, whether it's good quality or not. But we often do not realize or are aware of the quality of our own mind. Actually, our own mind has its quality, and that is exactly the quality that the Buddha developed when he attained enlightenment. And the Buddha, when he attained enlightenment, made the mind wieldy and malleable, made it soft and subtle. And that is the quality of the mind, the good quality of the mind that made the Buddha attain, finally was the precondition, the important requisite condition for him to attain enlightenment. Because the mind that is subtle, soft, wieldy can be worked on. But if the mind is impure, it cannot be worked on. And the mind that is still thinking about all the bad things we've done, still feels incomplete, feels in suffering, that mind cannot go to a good place. This is the law of karma. Karma is our relations. We will meet and go to places when we are reborn according to our karma. That is why the Buddha finally concluded about the law of karma, that apart from the fact that we are the owners of karma, we are the heir to it. Karma is the womb from which we sprung, and karma is our relations. Most importantly, karma is our protection and refuge. Because it is karma, it is our deeds that we have done with a pure or impure mind that actually determine our future destination. But of course, I realize that this is not making myself popular, stating such a traditional teaching. But this teaching is important, and it has always been part of Buddhism. The Buddha, he never talked about these things just symbolically, but very clearly stated this. The Buddha, he never if he talked about metaphors, he would just say it's a metaphor. He wouldn't talk about a metaphor and not say it is a metaphor. He would always be clear in his speech. He wasn't talking in riddles and vague speech, but he was a clear and to the point teacher. But it's important for us to realize that this is not a matter of membership, what religion you belong to, what nation you are from, what race you are from, or what race you belong to, but it's a matter of our actions. The law of karma is therefore not a personal matter it's not a matter of this person deserves that or that person deserves this, because the law of karma doesn't look at the person, but it looks at the actions. The law of karma occurs because of actions. It doesn't occur because you deserve that or that person deserves that. So when someone is born poor because of never having given to others, it's not that he's born poor and he deserves that. This is just the law of action operating, the law of karma. And that is a neutral law that doesn't look at what people deserve or not. And this is the law that the Buddha discovered. He didn't create it. On a similar note, we might be praying all our lives to go to a good destination after we die. But just praying won't have any effect. We might be praying all our lives. On the other hand, we might be praying all our lives to have our enemies go to a bad place after they die. But that won't have any effect as well. Because it's not because of praying that people go to heaven or go to hell or go to a good or a bad destination. But it's because of actions. Just like you have a great number of people holding a stone, throwing a big boulder into the water and then crying out, jumping around, don't sing, don't sing, don't sing, don't sing. The stone will sink. It will always have to sink, even if you jump around that long, you cry out that strong. On a similar note, if you have oil in the water and you throw oil in that water and you say to the oil, sink, please sink to the bottom, sink to the bottom. Will the oil sink to the bottom? Because oil doesn't mix with water, so it will always be on the surface. So these things are not determined by whether we are this religion or that religion, whether we are prey to this person or that person. But it is all determined by our actions. That is why karma is our actual refuge. But of course, we can learn from a good teacher about these things and then practice a good life. When we practice a good life, we will then receive the rewards of happiness and joy. Rewards that didn't come because of that teacher created these rewards, but these rewards came because of the law of action, the law of karma. So this is very important for us to understand, to learn. Finally, we then are left with a couple of more items. The seventh item simply says in the text, and the mother exists, or the father exists. The meaning here is that we owe to our parents. We owe to our mother, we owe to our father. What do we owe to them? It depends. If they have created this human body and they have taught us, and if they have taught us many good things, then we owe much to them. If they have taught us little, we owe little to them. It depends. But most importantly, we owe to them. Because our parents, if it wasn't for our parents, we wouldn't have been able to live this life as we have now. The Buddha, he compared the gratitude that we owe to our parents. He said it's very big, very large, very important. Just like he said, if we were to repay this gratitude by doing something back to them, if you just carry them on your shoulders for 100 years and attend to all their needs, anoint them, massage them, rub them, all of that. And they might even actually, the text actually say, they might actually, excrement on you. Then it's still not enough to pay back the gratitude you owe to your parents. Because why? Because they have given this human life, have brought us up and have raised us, have taken good care of our education and all that. Therefore our parents, we owe a lot to them. There is a nice tradition in Japan that they have one Mother's Day, and the people of Japan on that Mother's Day will all wear a rose. And any person whose mother is still alive will wear, I think it is a red rose. But any person whose mother has died will wear a white rose. So we can imagine that Mother's Day in Japan, everyone walking around with these roses. And if your rose is still there, and it's still red, you're happy that your mother is still alive. You see many white roses, but your one's still red. This is a very beautiful custom of the Japanese.
Chanan, did you notice that the Dhamma lecture of the Venerable Santa today happened to be the same topic as given by the Lord Buddha on the Asana Puja Day?
You mean the Eightfold Path?
Yes, right.
Yes, what a coincidence. According to the Buddhist literature, at that time in the Deer Park, the Buddha addressed the group of 5 monks saying, "Bhikkhus, there are 2 extremes that a monk should avoid. The first is the devotion to sensual desire and the pleasure resulting from the sensual desire."
And the second is harsh austerity.
Right. And by not following either of these, the Buddha himself has realized the middle way, which gave rise to seeing and understanding, which are the basis of peace, knowledge, full awakening, and nirvana. But what is the middle way? The Buddha continued to say that it is the Eightfold Path.
And I remember it too, that Eightfold Path consists of right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right diligence, right mindfulness, and right concentration.
Yes, and the Buddha preached this before he preached the Four Noble Truths.
It's very good you remember this very well. As a Buddhist, we ought to be a living proof for the religion, and I think you are doing a good job, Chana.
Thank you. I take this as a compliment. Now it is time you tell the audience what's next.
As usual, in the final part of the Meditation for Peace, we have a video presentation on merit-making activities created by the most venerable Parajapavana Visud, หลวงพ่อธรรมชโย of วัดพระธรรมกาย which is very fantastic to watch. So please don't miss it. You can easily get some merit by rejoicing in the happiness and good deeds done by people in the video.
ฝึกตนได้อะไรมากมายวันเวลาแห่งชีวิตที่ยิ่งใหญ่เพื่อพ่อแม่ของฉันสุขที่สุดในใจไม่มีวันเปลี่ยนแปลงโลกนี้มีสิ่งที่สำคัญหลักคำสอนศาสนาคือหัวใจจะดูแลรักษาอยู่เป็นกำลังใจวัดนั้นไม่ควรร้างให้พ่อได้รู้ให้แม่ได้รู้อยากตอบแทนพระคุณสักครั้งในวันนี้จะยอมทุ่มเททุกอย่างเชื่อฟังคำสอนพระอาจารย์และสิ่งที่รู้ในจิตใจลูกผู้ชายอย่างฉันและจะขอทำดีตราบนานเท่านานบวชให้พ่อและให้แม่ชื่นใจรักนี้มีแต่ให้เท่านั้นวัดไม่ร้างศาสนาคือหัวใจโปรดช่วยกันรักษาวิชาธรรมกายเป้าหมายที่สุดแห่งธรรมให้พ่อได้รู้ให้แม่ได้รู้ว่าส่วนลึกข้างในใจฉันยังคงรักท่านไปตราบนานเท่านานและจะรักไม่มีวันเปลี่ยนแปลงอยู่เป็นเนื้อนาบุญกันตลอดไป
The only desire of Luang Por Thammachayo is to help one see the triple gem within. How can we bring the practice of the middle way meditation to the widest spectrum of society? How can we give birth to the greatest number of people who are happy and who know how to teach the art of mindful living to others?
The numbers of people who create violence is very great, while the number of people who know how to breathe and create happiness is very small. Every day gives us a wonderful opportunity to be happy ourselves and to become place for refuge for others.
So please keep up on your meditation practice. On this auspicious week of Asanha Puja, we wish everyone to be able to attain the triple gem inside and be blessed by the grace of the triple gem for good health, long life, and prosperity. That wraps up our show for today. Thank you very much for your viewing. Until we meet again next week, goodbye. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ